I wanted to welcome everyone today. I'm Susan Bonilla from the 11th Assembly District. Very happy to be here in my hometown of Concord, California. And it's really a privilege to be here today with each one of you around this very, very important issue that we will be discussing. Very excited to be part of this dialogue and really ignite this dialogue here and then hopefully across the state of California. It's my privilege to be chair of a select committee on high-quality early childhood education. And today we're gathered to focus not on just the broader aspects of high-quality early childhood education, but the topic of transitional kindergarten. Nowadays, if you go around and start talking about TK, you'll still see some puzzled faces within the community. Probably in this room, that isn't the case. And I think one of our goals is to really flesh out and explain what transitional kindergarten is meant to be, what should it be, what are we hoping it will become for those children who fall into that age gap where they're a little young for kindergarten. I'd like now to acknowledge some of our guests today. We have Contra Costa County Supervisor of District 4, Karen Mitchoff here. Thank you, Karen, for being here. We have Council Member from Concord City Council, Tim Grayson, here as well. Thank you so much, Tim, for joining us today. We also have Brian Hooker here from Congressman Garamendi's office, and he'll be delivering a short statement in a few minutes. Thank you, Brian, for representing the Congressman as well. And we regret to say that Congressman Miller was unable to attend, but of course we all know he has a tremendous interest in education and early childhood education as well. I want to particularly thank Senator Joe Simitian from Santa Clara County for being here, State Senator, and for agreeing to provide testimony and also having the idea for bringing us all together around this important topic and hearing from each one of you. Last year, the legislature passed Senator Simitian's Senate Bill 1381, which phases in the change of date a child is required to be admitted to kindergarten from December 2nd to September 1st, beginning in the 2014-15 school year and each year thereafter. The bill also created the transitional kindergarten program for students impacted by the change in admission date. Even though the law does not require school districts to begin offering transitional kindergarten until 2012-13, some school districts have voluntarily decided to become early adopters. We are fortunate to have representatives from Los Angeles, Fresno, and Rescue Union school districts here today to share their experiences. We will hear their experiences in planning and implementation, and I want to highlight their best practices for other school districts that may be in the beginning and planning stages of transitional kindergarten. Throughout the legislative session, the Select Committee will work to address issues around the disparity of children beginning school unprepared, which causes the school readiness gap to grow, and inevitably these same children to remain behind their peers within the school system. There have been countless studies and reports detailing the need to streamline early childhood education. And I know that in a sense I'm talking to the choir here today because everyone in this room understands how incredibly valuable and critical those early years are. And as we're expecting our children to learn more and more information in their school years, it is time for us to begin understanding how to lay that really solid foundation for them in these early preschool years. Specifically, there was a 2009 report from the Bay Area Council that concluded that investments in high-quality educational experiences during the years from birth to age 5 significantly improve not only school achievement, but also a broad range of social and economic outcomes throughout life. And so really one of the things we're discussing today is that idea of the total person, starting with this young child and how this good experience for them in the early years is going to prepare them for not only a good job, but also a more successful life outcome. I want to start today to plan and prepare. We know that we don't have the funds today to do everything we want to do around preschool for our children, around public preschool for them. But if we don't plan now, it will never become a reality. And so we do have a perfect opportunity, even though perhaps funding for the broadest vision and the broadest dreams we have may not be available, that if we start talking now, if we raise the issue, and I think transitional kindergarten provides such an excellent opening to talk about this issue, to really see that all of our children at some point will get that high quality early education that we know they need and deserve. It's shown that with pre-K, we believe that for every $1 invested, there is $7 returned in terms of the value into the life of this child, and the social return on this investment is great. I'm eager to see transitional kindergarten fully implemented, because it is a step forward, and it's certainly going to ensure the economic recovery, the educational recovery that we know the state of California needs to see and begin planning for. So again, I want to thank every one of you for participating, being here today, and I look forward to learning a lot of things from our constructive dialogue here. Now I'd like to turn it over to Senator Simitian to give us some background and a legislative update on what he's been working on.
Thank you very much. I think it might help if I began by telling you a little bit about how Senate Bill 1381 came to be. How did we end up at the place we are today? And it began really with a pair of local teachers in my district who showed up in my office 2 years ago. They had a petition that they and 287 of their classroom colleagues had signed, asking me to introduce legislation to adjust the kindergarten start date so that youngsters who were turning 5 as late as December 2nd of the school year would now be obliged to turn 5 by September 1st in the school year in order to begin kindergarten. And they made the case pretty effectively, but what I shared with them was that this was hardly a new issue. It was a subject that had been kicked around the state capitol for, frankly, the last 25 years. Democrats, Republicans, assembly members, senators, governors, as well as legislators at various times had suggested this change, and for whatever reason, inertia just always took hold, and that seemingly simple and straightforward change to the start date was something that never quite happened year after year after year. They thanked me for sharing that history and then asked me again, would I please introduce a piece of legislation to change the kindergarten start date and to adjust the age to be more age appropriate. We had a wonderful conversation, not just that day, but in subsequent conversations about why 5 should mean 5 by September the 1st, why that was in the best interest of the children of California. And a lot of it had to do with, as many of you in this room will know, the fact that youngsters are just not really ready for kindergarten. Most youngsters, every youngster different, every youngster unique, but most youngsters not ready for kindergarten emotionally, developmentally, academically, if they are not yet 5 by the time they begin kindergarten. And we had this conversation, and one of the things that emerged right away was that this was not just a kindergarten issue, because as I looked at the petition I had from teachers in my district, I said, well, these are first grade teachers and third grade teachers and fifth grade teachers, and I very politely said, you know, are they just signing because you ask? Because people will do that sometimes with petitions. And the teachers very politely smiled back and said, no, actually, Senator, they're signing because the problems we identify in kindergarten with the youngsters who start too young follow those kids into first grade and third grade and fifth grade. And so this isn't just a kindergarten issue. This is a question of lifelong success as these kids move through the system. Fair enough. And then we started to talk a little bit more about the larger, longer-term consequences of letting this issue go unaddressed. And one of the comments that was, I thought, really startling that one of the teachers who later came into the conversation offered up was, she said, Senator, I know you're supportive, but I'm not sure you understand just how big a deal this is. And I said, well, you know, what do you mean? And she said, well, there are 6 million kids in the K through 12 school systems in California. So if 25% of them are starting too young to maximize their potential for success, that means you've got 1.5 million kids who are going to school who didn't start at an age when they had the greatest possible opportunity to be successful in our system. And that's a pretty big number with pretty big consequences. As we looked at the data over time, it became clearer and clearer. You look at the number of youngsters who are held back on a national level, something like 18% of kids who are held back at least one grade sometime between K through 3. Guess what? They skew towards the younger kids, and they skew towards the kids who have not had a quality pre-K experience. We look at special education placements as well. In theory, those ought to be even across the span of ages, but in fact, they skew towards the younger kids and the kids who did not have a quality pre-K experience. So I needed very little convincing of the merits on this issue, but again, the challenge was, were we going to be able to make the system work in Sacramento after 25 years of unsuccessful efforts? There were lots of moments along the way. I have to tell you, for me, I try not to draw big conclusions from isolated incidents. A friend of mine likes to say that the plural of anecdote is not evidence, no matter what we think. But I was looking at a kindergarten report card, and the very notion of a kindergarten report card is a sort of an intriguing idea right off the bat. But then when I saw that there was space for the assessment of algebra skills on the kindergarten report card I was looking at, I thought, all right, clearly kindergarten is not the place that many of us remember so fondly. And while it's hard for folks out there in the general public to get it, again, many of the people in this room, and I can tell by the head nodding, get that kindergarten today is actually a rigorous academic experience for kids of that age. And we used to think of kindergarten as the get-ready year for real school, and now kindergarten is real school. One of the other great anecdotes was the teacher just turned to me and said, "Senator, look, it's really pretty simple. It's hard for us to be teaching skills when we're saying, Billy, we don't lick the floor in kindergarten, okay? That just, that's a challenge." So we discovered after I introduced the bill, Senate Bill 1831, last year in 2010, that there really was a pretty good consensus, not complete, but a pretty good consensus about trying to get the age right, to make kindergarten start at 5 and for it to be age appropriate for the kids we were going to serve. But then we discovered we had a problem. And the problem was that making the adjustment, rolling back the starting age by 3 months, saved the state of California $700 million a year. Now, only in the California state legislature would that be a problem. But it was a problem. And in fact, it was a bigger problem than you would imagine, because we save that $700 million a year because if we have a cohort of 12 months and we shrink it to 9 months when we make the adjustment, that's about 100,000 kids who are not going to be part of that smaller cohort. That saves us $700 million. And the immediate reaction is, well, isn't that just one time? Well, one time, but 13 times in a row, because the following year that smaller cohort is in the first grade, and then they're in the second grade, and then they're in the third grade. So you're saving $700 million a year over 13 years, which is $9.1 billion. And that's an even bigger problem. Now, you're all looking at me like, why on earth is that a problem? And the answer is, if you found $9.1 billion, everybody thinks it should go to them. So if you're a deficit hawk, you quite reasonably say, we've got big problems in California. Shouldn't those savings all be devoted to the deficit? If you're a person who's concerned about K through 12 education or pre-K through 12 education and a Prop 98 guarantee of funding, you're saying, wait a minute, we've been beaten about the head and shoulders in public education over the last few years. We've seen probably a 20% reduction in the resources that are available to us. And now you're talking about achieving $700 million in savings, and you just want to take that right out of our system? That doesn't seem fair. So I attempted to split the difference, and the bill that I initially introduced was, let's take $350 million and put it towards deficit reduction, and take another $350 million and use it to provide additional funding for preschool under the California state preschool programs. That got us out of the state Senate. We had bipartisan support. And then when we got to the Assembly, we had sort of a sudden recognition on the part of a lot of the stakeholders, hey, this is actually likely to happen, which really was a startling development to people after 25 years of false hopes. And then the conversation got a little bit more serious about, well, wait a minute. If we're going to achieve those savings, what's the best way to spend those savings over the next decade and a half? And folks came forward and made the following arguments. We're in the midst of a recession. Are we really going to tell parents, I'm sorry, but you've got to hold your kids who are no longer going to be headed off to kindergarten for another year and pay for your own child care expense? Are we going to tell them that you may have to take another year off from work and avoid that income? Are we going to tell them that, yes, it's good for their kids to wait, but that it's somehow good for their kids to wait even if they haven't had a quality experience during that year? They're just a year later in getting started in a public school system without the benefit of an assured place in a quality program. And ultimately, the consensus that developed was around creating a program called TK, Transitional Kindergarten, which is a second year of kindergarten. And that TK experience would be available, unfortunately, not for every youngster who was 4 the year before kindergarten, but for those young 5s who would no longer be eligible for kindergarten, but who would now be in a place where they were ready to start a program called Transitional Kindergarten, giving them that year of quality pre-kindergarten instruction before they started kindergarten, which is now real school. That's the place we ended up. Just a little bit of drama at the end of the session. That midnight on August the 31st, all work stops. If your bill isn't passed by then, you're out of luck. I should tell you in this case, at 11:52 in the evening, with 8 minutes to go, we had 19 votes on the floor of the California State Senate. 21 out of 40 are required. We were 2 votes short, 8 minutes to go, session's about to end. I turned to a colleague on my right who had just voted against the bill. We had a brief discussion. He was persuaded to change his vote, and he called out that he would change his vote from no to aye. I turned to my left and looked over my shoulder and spoke to a colleague who had not yet voted on the matter. We had a brief discussion about his niece's potential to attend kindergarten on a timely basis. I assured him that there was an exception in existing law for the special children, and I know that every kid's parents think they're special, so that stays in the law, and that means that there's some flexibility. He was comforted. He cast his aye vote, and at 11:52, with 11:53, with 7 minutes to spare, the bill passed off the Senate floor and went to the governor. Just to make it a little more interesting, the governor had until September the 30th to sign the bill. On the morning of September 30th, we had not heard a word from the governor's office. A month had gone by, clock is ticking. At 9:15 that evening, the governor's office called to say that they had in fact signed the bill and that we would be moving forward with both the age change and transitional kindergarten. That's what's brought us to this place today. As the Assembly member mentioned, we did a couple of things on a process basis that I think are important and helpful. First is we provided for a 2-year delay in implementation. So the program for TK does not begin and the rollback on age does not begin until the 2012 school year. No matter how good the idea in Sacramento may be, it has been my experience that if we expect people to simply adopt it in 6 weeks and make the world work in a very different way, that usually doesn't work out so well. So I thought it was important we take time to plan. Then additionally, we've got the 3-year phase-in period that Assemblymember Bonilla described, so that it's a 1-month rollback each year over a 3-year period. The goal is both to learn from our experiences as we unfold the program, but also to make sure that there isn't a big, dramatic, crashing wave in terms of staffing. Important to remember, if we do it all in 1 year, then all of a sudden you've got too many kindergarten teachers, but then the following year when we go back to the normal number of kids in the kindergarten cohort, you need those teachers back, except that year you've got way too many first grade teachers, except the year after that, you'll need them all back, all the way through 10th grade math and science classes if you keep doing it that way. So it seemed gentler and a little bit more absorbable if we spaced that out over 3 years and created a sort of a light ripple rather than a crashing wave in terms of staffing patterns in school districts. Last comment I'll make before we go to the other speakers and the panelists is we do have a piece of legislation. It's called Senate Bill 30 this year that has been introduced as a vehicle if there is additional work to be done, if there are implementation measures, if there's more clarity that's needed. One of the reasons and one of the benefits of having a hearing like this is to make sure that we listen to folks now that the bill has become law, hear what you all think are unanswered questions. Preschool California will probably tell you if they don't, they have a great set of questions and answers and facts up on their webpage. I understand that just today the State Department of Education has released a healthy frequently asked questions list, and I hope they'll talk about that as well. But if there are issues that require statutory amendment, we're going to have this vehicle available, and want you to know that that's one of the reasons I'm here today, to listen to you all and see what we need to take back as we head towards implementation date. So thanks a million for being here. I think it's an exciting opportunity, and I'm pleased that you all are going to take part in shaping what transitional kindergarten and this age change looks like as we roll it out in the field.
Thank you so much, Senator. Now we'd like to just have a few brief comments from Congressman John Garamendi, delivered by his staff person, Brian Hooker, and then we'll follow that with some statements that George Miller was able to send with his staff member, Adrian Urino.
Testing.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you very much, Senator Sumidian, Assemblywoman Bonilla, for the opportunity to be here on behalf of Congressman Garamendi and for bringing this attention to this issue and your leadership on this issue as well. I do have a prepared statement from Congressman Garamendi here, and I'll read that. Today in America is confronted with difficult economic and social challenges that require the next generation to have all the tools at their disposal to innovate and think outside the box to meet these challenges. To meet these challenges, we must invest in our schools and in the youth of America. From the decline of American manufacturing to the dangerous consequences of climate change and the increasing globalization of this world, the decisions of the next generation will determine the future of this great state and the country that we love. If America is going to make it, then we must make sure that every child has access to quality and engaging education. We must make sure that every child develops a love for early learning, and programs like transitional kindergartens are good resources for students to develop early learning tools that will set them apart on a path for future success in middle school, high school, college, and eventually leaders in our community. The time is now for America and California to invest in our youth. They are our hope, and they are our future. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Congressman John Garamendi, 10th Congressional District.
Thank you very much. And now, Congressman George Miller's representative, Adrian, thank you so much for being here on behalf of the Congressman.
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Adrienne Ursino, and I'm actually the mother of a kindergartner, and we're doing really good so far. So anyway, I personally am fascinated by this issue as well. And of course, Congressman Miller was a former chairman of the Education and Labor Committee, and now he is a minority leader. And his statement is, "Dear Assemblywoman Bonilla and hearing participants, while my schedule in Washington prevents me from addressing you here in person, I am grateful to have the opportunity to submit my statement in strong support of early childhood education. Over the past 38 years, I have represented the children and families of the 7th Congressional District. I have found no single issue matters more for our future today than early education. From the first years of life on, providing children with a top-notch education and support at every stage is the best thing we can do to strengthen our middle class, our economy, and our competitiveness. We also know that investments made in early childhood yield impressive returns. Studies have found that spending $1 today on early childhood can lead to savings of $1.25 to $17 down the line. To that end, we must do much more to ensure that every child has a solid foundation that prepares them for success. Again, I send my best wishes for a successful hearing. I'm eager to hear the outcomes of your discussion today. Sincerely, Congressman George Miller."
Thank you very much. And we really are fortunate to have such a champion for education and for our children in Washington, D.C. Congressman Miller's been fighting this battle for years, and it'll be great to give him this information as well around the transitional kindergarten issue. We just want to make a quick comment. We do have public comment cards available. If you want to fill those out, we'll be collecting them, and at the end of our panels, we'll give you that opportunity to come forward and give your input. We're eager to hear that as well. We'll probably be limiting your speaking time to a minute or two. We'll just see how many people and what time it is by the time we get through our panels. It's really a privilege to have our first panel here, and they will be discussing the importance of early childhood education, kind of the broad brush strokes of that. And we're going to begin with Matt Regan, the Vice President of Government Relations for the Bay Area Council, and I'll just say that this was really the document that sparked my interest. Mo Kiami of Cal State East Bay, the president, said, "You should read this, Susan. It's a really great study." And I read it, and I was like, you know, we go, how are we going to help our kids be more successful? And there's a lot of talk out there. There are a lot of red herrings being dragged around, and what are we going to do about education? But I felt this document that Matt's going to be sharing with us today really, for me, gave me some great answers on student success and understanding that if we fix things at the beginning of the pipeline, we're going to see a better outcome down the road. Just to also introduce the rest of the panel, we have Joe Ovick, our Contra Costa County Superintendent, of Education here, and also Professor Dr. Ann Cunningham from UC Berkeley, the Director of the Joint Doctoral Program in Special Education and Professor of Cognition and Development. And with that, Matt, we'd invite you to begin and share any other information in your introduction that you would like to as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Assemblymember Bonilla. Thank you, Senator Simitian, for inviting us here today to speak. My name is Matt Regan. As Assemblymember Bonilla said, I'm Vice President of Government Relations for the Bay Area Council. I'm also on the Board of Directors of the Contra Costa Child Care Council. Hi, Kate. And I'm a father of a daughter who's about to turn 5 on September 4th, who falls right into that transitional kindergarten bucket, and who my wife and I are currently deliberating over, should we send her, should we not send her? So TK comes a few years too early to solve our particular problem, but so I fully understand and sympathize and support everything that the transitional kindergarten is attempting to achieve. And we as an organization fully supported SB 1381, and I don't know if Senator Simitian knows this, but I'll share it with him. On the eve of the bill signing, or rather the potential bill signing by the governor, when Ernesto Saldana in Preschool, California were madly scrambling to get everybody and their mother to call the governor to sign the bill. We participated in that process, and the then chair of our Early Education Committee, Ken McNeely, who's the president of AT&T California, called the governor, I think at about 8:30 that evening, and got him at home and urged him to sign the bill, and the governor made a commitment that he would sign the bill. So not that we're taking all the credit, but take a little piece. But why is, a lot of people ask, why is a business association like the Bay Area Council involved in early childhood education? And to give a little background on who we are and what we do, we're a business public policy and advocacy group. We have about 275 member companies. About 1 in 5 private sector employees in the 9-county Bay Area region works for one of our member companies, and we advocate for a quality of life, for quality of life issues, and for a strong economy for the region. And obviously, early childhood education, as our report has shown, and as Assemblymember Bonilla explained, is a very strong integral component part of a good quality of life and a good overall educational experience. So we produced this report a couple of years ago. I have some copies. I'll give them to Assemblymember Bonilla's staff if anybody would like one. But this presentation and the report is designed to generate interest among the broader business community for this issue. We've had some success within our own membership, developing and growing support for early childhood education. Actually, I have to leave a little early today. Our quarterly Early Childhood Education Committee meeting happens to be this afternoon in Oakland at 3 o'clock, and our new chair is George Halverson, the CEO of Kaiser Permanente. So we have a lot of support at the very highest levels of some of California's largest companies, which is great. We're trying to grow that support, and this presentation is designed to lure and entice other CEOs into the conversation and to show them just how important this issue is to them as employers in California. So it's an economic argument, and a lot of you are probably familiar with the work of James Hackman. He's a Nobel laureate economist, and he did a lot of the early studies on the returns on investment, the human capital returns on investment of quality early education. And his work is kind of the seminal work that a lot of people point towards when they talk about early childhood education and the returns on investment. And we focused a lot of our report on his work. This is a Hackman graph, and as you can see, this is where the greatest returns on investment are generated. It also happens to be where we invest the least amount of money, and that's in the very early years, 0 to 3. We invest not all, but the bulk of our money in these years where, as you can see, the returns are much less. This is where the foundation of the house is built, and if we don't get this foundation right, this part is going to be very expensive to do, because you'll be fixing, you'll have remedial education, grade repetition, and a lot of very expensive fixes if you don't invest appropriately in these early years and set a child off on the right path. So what exactly are those savings? Well, they're broken down into a number of areas. There are a number of different statistics out there on what those savings actually are. The high number comes from the Perry Preschool Project, which is $17 for every dollar invested in early education. That's for the very highest at-risk kids, and it sort of came in before Head Start as well. So that's an overly optimistic projection. But the real number is somewhere between, depending on the child in question, somewhere between $2 and $8. You can expect a return on investment. And where do those returns come from? Well, you're going to have big savings in the K-12 system. You're going to have much reduced levels of grade repetition, much reduced levels of remedial education. You're going to have a much more successful child going through the K-12 system. When that child exits the K-12 system and goes into the workforce or on to further and higher education, they are going to be, the studies have shown, again, the Perry Preschool study in particular, that child's going to have a much higher lifetime earning potential, be a much more productive citizen, will pay more taxes, be much less likely to need welfare assistance. And the savings go across the board on a number of levels. They're much less likely to be to have drug and alcohol addiction problems, much less likely to enter the criminal justice system. So the savings are achieved in a whole array of ways, again, from a productivity standpoint and from a social investment standpoint. Say the children who receive these quality early education experiences produce much greater returns than perhaps any other tax dollar that we as a society can invest. So then you have to ask, why is early childhood education doubly important to this region, this Bay Area that we call home? And that's because this is a knowledge-based economy. We're not Pittsburgh, we're not Iowa, we don't have smokestacks or thousands of miles of acres of rippling corn. Our economy is based upon biotech, it's based upon high tech, it's based upon financial services, it's based upon having a well-qualified, highly educated workforce. The raw materials for that workforce are the kids coming out of our schools. So we know as a business entity that follow these things that it's vitally important for us to not fall behind other regions, other states when it comes to the and other international competitors, most importantly, when it comes to the education of our children, which is why we as an organization have invested so much time and energy in quality early education. So if I'm sure some of you are subscribers to claycourt.com, so you will know that there are both cynics and skeptics when it comes to early childhood education. When this meeting was posted, I read some of the responses and scratched my head. But so there are cynics and there are skeptics out there, which is, it's understandable. You hear phrases like cradle to grave socialism, it's a parent's responsibility, why does the government need to be getting involved in this issue? Well, I'll address the skeptics first. This is not a cozy, soft and fluffy social science experiment. This is about brain development. And the biological studies show that children who receive quality early childhood education experiences, actually you can take pictures of brain synapse development and show that that brains are actually growing faster. They're making the appropriate connections within the brain tissue that children need in order to progress and succeed in life. George Halverson, as I say, the new chair of our committee, is particularly fascinated by brain development, and it's an issue that's near and dear to his heart, which is why he's investing so much time in this arena. So early brain development lays the foundation. As I say, it's like building a house. It lays the foundation for everything that comes after. The good thing with that is that if we get it right, it makes what comes after easier. But if we get it wrong, it's very, very difficult to correct those mistakes. Good experiences produce good results, and unfortunately, vice versa. This is my favorite slide. This shows, as you can see, this is where the major peaks of brain development actually take place, both in physical sensory pathways, language, and higher cognitive function. all in the very early years. And that also, as I showed earlier, that's where we invest the least amount of money in a child's developmental path. We spend all of the money up here, and business is more guilty than perhaps anyone else of this, because most CEOs, if you talk to them about education, go, oh yeah, we support education, we're all for that. We have a STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and math, and we're working with high school seniors to prepare them for the workplace. Well, it's too late. And not that they shouldn't do that, but it's not the best place for them to invest either their political capital, their philanthropic dollar, or their time and energy. They would be much better served to do it here. And that's why we're talking to CEOs to get involved in this early childhood education arena, to get them talking about the issue. It's a tough ask, because you're talking in a lot of regards about a 17, 18-year return on investment, but and I'll get to that a little later in my comments. But it's a tough ask for a lot of CEOs to get them to drill that deeply into the education experience of a potential employee who's 3 years old. So, that's hopefully the skeptics put to rest. Here are the cynics. I didn't get a fancy preschool education, and I turned out just fine. And this is a criticism or a comment you hear very often, particularly from business owners, business leaders, but CEOs. It's, we've got a lot of competing needs. We've got a shrinking tax base. We have challenges up the wazoo in California, and you're expecting us that we need to focus on this issue? Please. And I didn't have it, and look at me, I'm fine, I'm a CEO. Well, quality childhood education experiences are different for different people. My daughter's going to do just fine. My wife and I will make sure of that. So if she doesn't, if by chance have access to a quality preschool education that the state may or may not fund, we will make sure she gets one. So white middle class people, we're going to do just fine. And that's largely that's this guy. That's Gunny Hartman. He's the white middle class guy. That's the cynic. What we really need to do in an era of shrinking budgets and increasing needs is focus and target our early childhood education investments in those kids who really need it, the kids who are most at risk. And so that's kids who perhaps have English as a second language, kids whose parents work 4 jobs and can't be at home or give them the time and attention that they need, kids who might have a grandparent as their provider, as their daytime babysitter. And we hear horror stories all the time of kids who, when they enter kindergarten, can't tell colors from numbers, or letters from numbers, colors from shapes, but they can tell you who the cast of General Hospital is because they spend all day sitting watching soap operas with grandma, and they get absolutely no education experience or benefit. This goes back to the business leader. This argument is, again, I'm too busy, you take care of it. And this is related to that, again, that long time horizon return on investment. The business leader said, well, I get it. I understand everything you've told me. I understand the return on investment. I support what you're trying to do. But it really doesn't impact my bottom line. I run a car dealership. I have 25 people on staff. I'm trying to keep the doors open. There's a recession. Why should I invest anything in this issue? 3, 4-year-old kids? I'm sorry. I've got too many other things on my plate. Well, it's not just a question about 15, 16-year returns on investment. It impacts business on a day-to-day basis. For those of you who are parents in the room, you know that if your child is in a quality program, you're more productive at work. You're not constantly on the phone checking up. You're not taking days off because your provider is unreliable. You're a much more productive employee, and you don't have to make that decision of having to take an extra year out of the workforce because there is no such thing as transitional kindergarten, and you have to call your boss and say, hey, I can't come to work next year. I mean, there's a funny story that a lot of the Chamber of Commerce folks will say. It's when somebody walks into the office and says, hey, great news, we're having a baby. Everybody's delighted except the boss, because they look at that employee and go, usually if it's a mom, there's someone I'm going to lose, or a father, that's someone who's going to be calling in sick a lot in the next couple of years. So there are immediate benefits to employers to getting involved in this issue. And these statistics come from, not from the early childhood education world, but from the HR, the human resources world. And on average, it costs $17,000 to replace a worker. So if someone does have to leave the workforce to take care of a child because they can't find quality preschool, that's a hit to that employer's bottom line. And that climbs the higher up the chain you go, the salary chain you go. For middle management, as you can see, the turnover can be 150% of that employer's salary. So if you're an attorney working in a law firm in San Francisco and you make $200,000 a year, and you get pregnant and you have to leave the workforce because you can't find the type of appropriate early education, that's going to cost your boss $300,000 to recruit a new replacement, get that replacement up to speed, and the lost productivity during that gap time. So these numbers, then you start seeing the employers going, aha, okay, now I get it. This is an HR issue. And then we go, what can you do to help? And join our committee, get involved. When Senator Simitian has a bill that makes sense, that the business community ought to be supporting, and Kate Ertzberger and the usual supporters for early childhood education, whatever the legislation might be, and Ernesto Saldana from Preschool California go to the legislature and go, we need more money for this program. And everybody goes, okay, that's the same story as last year, we need more. But when CEOs show up, when Ken McNeely and George Halverson show up and tell the legislature, we need more money for this program, it's a different type of message from a different messenger. And that's why it's important that the business community get involved and stay involved in this issue, and that's why we're working on this issue. So thank you. I hope I haven't rambled too long, and I'm glad to take questions at the end of the panel.
Well, thank you for really giving us a great introduction and foundation to build on. Appreciate that perspective very much. And I think we will go ahead and move on through our panel with Dr. Ovick. And I do understand that some of our panelists have to leave and have other commitments as well. Dr. Ovick.
Well, thank you both for inviting me to be a part of this. Early childhood education has been an extremely important issue for me in my 41 years as an educator, and now as a grandparent of 4 preschoolers. This is extremely important because they all reside here in the Bay Area. And by the way, both their fathers are part of the economic community here in the Bay Area as well, and the entire family, as a family, are lifelong learners. As you were talking, Matt, I couldn't help but think my oldest son spent his first year as a preschooler riding a tricycle on a meandering pathway, except when he had time to build things. And that was the extent of Mulberry Preschool in San Jose. You might think that, good heavens, he should have been writing and reading, and no. He's married, has an MBA, working for a large banking company, homeowner in San Francisco, and he's done very well. So as an educator speaking about early childhood education, I think it's important, first and foremost, to understand that whatever we do as we move forward, it has to be age appropriate and developmentally appropriate for all children. Learning starts at birth and continues throughout life before formal education begins. And some might say it even begins before life, before a child's born. Success or failure during the early years of life lays the foundation for success or failure, in which may lead to successes or failure in post-academic learning. Bottom line, learning is a lifelong pursuit. Quality early education experiences help children develop social emotional skills and language and reading skills which promote school success. Research-based evidence demonstrates clear academic and social benefits to children who attend quality early education programs. Effective early learning helps address the readiness gap before it becomes an achievement gap. Children from all ethnic, racial, and economic backgrounds benefit from high-quality early education. Research suggests that universal programs are more effective at reaching at-risk children than programs targeted for low-income families. High-quality early education increases early reading and math skills in all children. The effects are somewhat greater for disadvantaged children. Universal pre-kindergarten has been found to improve the school readiness skills of children from all economic, ethnic, and racial backgrounds. Research demonstrates that high-quality pre-kindergarten and full-day kindergarten are promising strategies to reduce this achievement gap in order to improve student achievement, reduce remedial education costs, strengthen schools, and increase school district-wide performance. The socioeconomic, physical, and cognitive linguistic capacities that emerge in early years are all important prerequisites for success in school and later in the workplace and the community. The basic architecture of the brain is constructed through an ongoing process that begins before birth and continues through adulthood. And as Matt showed with the chart, the first 5 years are absolutely imperative. The growth of the brain at that time is absolutely phenomenal. And the evolution of the human brain is absolutely phenomenal as we look at how children today are learning and growing compared to folks that happen to be my age, 63 years of age. By focusing on cognitive skills as measured by achievement or IQ tests, they exclude the critical importance of social skills, self-discipline, and a variety of non-cognitive skills that are known to determine success in life. Effective early childhood education combines both cognitive skills with character skills, such as attentiveness, persistence, self-regulation, and teamwork. Together, cognition and character drives education, career, and life success. As a society, we cannot afford to postpone investing in our children until they become adults, nor can we wait until they reach school age, a time when it may be too late to intervene. According to a report by the Pew Center on the States, rewards of paying now are better known than ever before. Supporting healthy early childhood development produces substantial educational, social, and financial benefits for children and their communities. An example, and Matt cited this, I believe, if you pay now $1,000 nutritional support during pregnancy from Women, Infants, and Children program prevents unhealthy habits versus paying later $10,000, a low birth weight baby incurs additional medical bills totaling thousands of dollars. Early childhood intervention for disadvantaged youth are more effective than interventions that come later in life. The return to human capital investment are greatest for young for two reasons. Skill begets skill, and younger persons have a longer horizon over which to recoup the fruits of their investment. Therefore, skill remediation programs for adults with severe educational disadvantages are much less efficient compared to early intervention programs. So are training programs for more mature displaced workers. At current levels of investment, cost-effective returns are highest for the young. According to James Hackman, Nobel laureate in economics, investing early childhood education is cost-effective strategy for promoting economic growth. Estimated return for $7 every dollar invested. Bottom line is we simply can't ignore our young people. Bottom line, our future and their future depends on our support, our love, and the resources that we can give our children, because we're preparing them for a world that we can't even imagine. Our knowledge base doubles every 72 hours. So as we prepare them for a knowledge-based economy in a world we can't imagine, we have to provide at a very early age the opportunity not only for them to learn, but to celebrate and enjoy the joys of being a child. And I'll close with one story, and Kate Ertzberger has heard this. She's going to hear it again. A longtime 49er fans. I know that's dangerous in the East Bay, but I've been here now in the East Bay for 26 years. I grew up in San Jose, fourth generation. We had a family behind us, season tickets at 49er games for years. And when the family behind us realized I was an educator, and quite proud, they were proud of their grandchildren, and they would bring their grandchildren to the 49er games. And one little boy, 6 years old, he said to me at a 49er game after the 49ers won, this was several years ago, he said, Dr. Ovick, when I finish elementary school, I'm going to go on to middle school. From middle school, I'm going on to high school. From high school, I'm going to major in college, probably pre-med. When I complete my undergraduate work, I'm going to go on to medical school, and I'm going to choose pediatrics. I'll probably do my internship either at Stanford or UC Med Center. And then I'm going to be a fireman. That's the joy we cannot rob from our children as we move forward in TK education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ovek. Really appreciate it.